There he is, right in time. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to let people roll in here today for a few minutes and get going. How are you, Mark? You're on mute, by the way, so I can't hear you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll get going here in just a minute.
How about now?
I can hear you now.
You switch from Teams to Zoom and back. It messes with my mic every time.
It's the only conspiracy theory that I believe in because it messes up all of the settings and it happens every single time.
Yep.
It's split back and forth. Mine is specifically from Zoom to Teams. So
Yep.
the
Mine
thing
is too.
is Zoom doesn't want you using Teams. So the minute you log in there, it's going to goof something up for you. So yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're kind of coming in a little bit hot, both of us, with a few little technology challenges at the beginning of this, but I'm so happy this is the last week in mortgage today. If I have not met you before, I am Faith Howard Mooney. I am the SVP of Member Engagement here at the Mortgage Collaborative. And I guess I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I have a really good guy from our network that I just absolutely love talking to. With us today, who is Marc Reneau, who is the First VP and Mortgage Operations Manager at First State Bank. So Marc,
Yes.
Thanks for doing this with
Of
me
course.
today. There is obviously, and before we get going though, we love this when it's interactive. So if agree with us, disagree with us, post your comments in the chat, and we will read those as we move along through here. So would love for you to participate in that way, anybody who wants to. But let's get going. There's just like a lot of stuff going on with the inauguration yesterday. I don't think there were some things that happened that were surprises, maybe. We knew going into it that there were going to be a bunch of executive orders that were signed right away. And there was one that was called, at least people are calling it, emergency price relief on housing, or that's what it is supposed to address. And so read through the article this morning. I didn't see it until this morning, but the order, it's an attempt to lower housing costs, expand housing supply, which would be great things. I think that we would all agree on that. It addresses apparently regulatory requirements that account for a 25% reduction in the cost of constructing a home is the statement that's being made in there. There are a lot of things in there. So I guess you probably read the article too. I don't need to spout off every single thing that's in there. But let's talk about it a little bit and see how you and how the people that have joined us today are feeling about some of the things that are in that executive order.
Yeah. So I will throw out there that it follows the suit of what I will say most politicians do. It's light on details, but big on the announcement.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what's being spoken about I'll preface this with, I'm a firm believer in that as a general public, we give way too much credit to the president for what they can and can't do. And we give them way too much blame for things they have no control over. That's just a standard for the American populace.
Yep.
However, in this case, in this case, I'm hard pressed to believe that any of this can even come to be a reality for no other reason than your zoning and planning and construction requirements are done at a local level. There is nothing federal about it, other than some things that are surrounded by floodplain issues and things like that. But other than that, those are all local. Your federal government can't really mess with that too much. The price is going up. That's called supply and demand. It's when you live in a capitalist society, that's going to happen. I don't disagree. As everyone is well aware, recently divorced the last couple of years, and I had to go out and buy a new place. And I was not happy because I had a 2% interest rate on a house.
Me too. Same.
And then I had to buy a new one. And yeah, I got higher rates and had to pay a higher price for something I could get for half the cost 5 years earlier. So
I was
I feel
relieved to
that
get
pain.
5.99%. Have to be
Yeah,
perfectly honest with you.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, what I found with most, most announcements by politicians, it's like I said, it's real light on the details, and I really don't see how any of that can come to fruition. Quite honestly, at least not from the federal level.
Yeah.
But
There were
hey,
a
you know
couple of
what?
things.
I'm happy to entertain anything that they might come out with.
Yep. I was going to say, especially if it's something that lowers housing costs and expands the housing supply. But I don't think that that's like, you're not going to be able to come in and do one single thing that's going
No.
to do that, or somebody would have done it already. There are a lot of smart people in this world and in our space. And um, yeah, the one thing that there were a couple of things in here that I was just kind of curious about, but one of his first agenda items is to reduce regulatory costs by almost $1,000 per household. And when I'm thinking about that per house, regulatory costs for $11,000 per household, what regula what regulatory things are we talking
That's
about?
that's that's what now I can tell you because I have some personal experience with it. I actually sit on a zoning and planning board in the township where I live. And yeah, there are application fees that people have to pull and permits and things of that nature. But again, it goes back to my previous statement. Those are locally set. It
Yeah.
depends on the municipality that you're working in. What are their cost structure? What are they going to charge to
I was
cover
going
that?
to say, are you just going to
They're
get
all
rid of
different.
those? What happens to those?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, it's light on way too much detail for my liking. So I chalk it up to an announcement to garner attention and move on. We'll
Yep.
see what happens.
Yep. It does state in here that the order aims to create employment opportunities for American workers, and it also seeks to eliminate harmful climate policies that increase the costs of food and fuel. And also, apparently, there's some big deal about appliances right now in there.
That goes back to, yeah. There were certain states I know that they were prohibiting people from getting gas appliances because it was contributing to climate and wanted everything to be electric. There was a bit of hubbub about that, but I think that mostly has died.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's a big deal anymore.
Yeah.
Though I will throw out there, and this is just my opinion. I tell everyone I have an opinion on everything. Just ask. Um, if they move forward with what they want to call the mass deportation,
That was my next on my agenda. I was
I'm
going
gonna,
to talk
it's
about
going
that.
to affect construction because I hate to say it, whether you're for immigration or you're against it, doesn't matter. That's our construction industry, at least half of it. And
Yeah.
I can tell you in our southern border states like Texas, if you do that, there's no more construction. No one's showing up for work. So
I think
not
it's
sure how they
funny
pull
that
that off.
you say that. That's one of the very first things that I thought of when I saw that. And people, please share your comments with us in the chat. I'm interested in hearing how other people. I said there are two industries that are going to be majorly impacted by this. One is hotels. Your rooms are not going to be cleaned anymore. And the other one is the mortgage industry. I've been involved in building 3 houses in the last 5 years. And when my houses were done and when the neighborhoods were complete in each of those, the thing that I probably missed most was the mariachi music. Because it was playing all day long. I got to know the workers that were there, but they all went home for one long weekend a month to see their families. So they were all here just for the work. And I think that it's going to be in our industry, it could be very counterproductive to new
Well,
construction.
and the other industry that you didn't mention was actually um, you have the farming industry, like on the West Coast with
Absolutely.
orange pickers and every other fruit in the world that needs to be picked. Yeah,
Well,
that labor
and now
is
that you say that, I'm in the Midwest where there's a
yeah,
lot of raising of animals. So anything that involves a plant that processes meats,
yep,
there would be a huge
yeah,
impact to that side of the food supply industry as
yeah.
well.
No, like I said, it's what a lot of the things that are being talked about is, and this is another topic I think we have a little bit later, but it's these are all things that are going to raise prices if you move forward with them. I mean, the United States actually was built on immigration.
Yeah.
That's how we came to be. It was
Yeah.
there were people that were fleeing religious persecution and look here in the United States. So
Yeah.
there's a long history there, and that's what we built ourselves on. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
know that some of the comments that I saw yesterday was deportation of only, certain individuals that had committed crimes and those types of things. But I'm a little worried now after seeing the 1,600 people that were involved in January 6th, now all
yeah,
being pardoned, that it's going to be a bigger thing than it is. And we're just going to have to sit back and wait
it's
and see
you
what
have to wait and see how
happens.
it plays out for sure. Because the reality is, I don't get my news. I will not watch any mainstream media at all. I just don't do it. I refuse to. If I want to know what's going on, I actually listen to the BBC, get the information from across the pond a little bit non-biased, or I read. Um,
Yeah.
but I will tell you, I listened to something very interesting this morning, and they were actually saying, based on current budget needs and restrictions of CPD and Homeland, they would actually have to double their budget to about $25 billion. I'm sorry, by 25 billion to 50 billion for 1 year to potentially try to accomplish what they're looking to do. They do not have the personnel. They do not have the people trained for it. It's going to be interesting because again, I think it's a lot of these are talking points. These are things that they want to make big waves about. But when push comes to shove, the really only thing they have control of right now are people that are awaiting deportation, that they already have too much going on as far as they're in jail, they're waiting to be deported, and they already know they're leaving. So they've got those, and that amounts to about 600,000 people, give or take. So you know what? Let's let that happen, and we'll see where it leads us. But
Yeah.
again, like I said, not a lot of details in that statement either.
Yeah.
You keep hearing me say that all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so true. It's like these big flashes out there, which we all know that President Trump is kind of enjoys being a flashy person anyway. So there are these flashes out there of, I don't know, maybe with a little bit of hope in them, but a lack of how this is all going to take
Yeah,
place. This is the one place we have someone on our team who always says, I need a flow chart. This is one where I'm going to say, I need a flow chart of how this
yeah,
is going to happen. I need to
yeah,
understand more for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Also, so you have some other BBC listeners. Tony is also one of those. I listen to multiple, if I'm going to listen to it, which I usually don't listen to it at all. But what I do is I hit multiple news channels and then hear what the discrepancies are and try to come up with some different conclusion. I don't
Well,
just listen to one specific one.
Well, it's like
So
if I'm curious what's really going on, what's funny is I have my iPhone, I switch over to the Apple News, and I'm looking to see, do multiple outlets have similar headlines? Okay,
exactly.
so there's something going on with that. Then I'll go figure out what it is I want to read.
Yep.
But when you sit there and yeah, there's just one outlier about yeah, okay, whatever, move on.
Yeah, that's
I
my
don't give it time of
process.
day.
Very similar to my process. Listen to
Yeah,
multiples and try to figure out what's really going on. Another thing that happened this past week in mortgage space, which is something that we definitely don't like to hear, and I would love to hear if anybody who's on here with us had this happen to them. So the FCC came out and issued a warning about a scam they're calling it the Green Mirage, where people are impersonating over 400 US mortgage lenders. Um, and apparently, this is kind of trending to happen, and it happened this time right after the natural disaster because so many more people are using or need some sort of mortgage relief
yep.
and are in a situation where they're trying to solve something. So they're spoofing people. Um, I have direct experience with this personally. It does work. They're spoofing people where they can change the number to any number they want. So it looks like it's coming from the actual homeowner's
Yep.
mortgage company. Have you
Yeah,
heard
it's
of any of this going on in your
oh yeah.
world?
No, it's a lot of money. It's a far cry from the African princes or the Saudi princes that used to come after you in email.
Yeah.
They've gotten much more sophisticated. I will tell you, I work at a bank. we hear stories about this, and this is where all we can do is try to educate as many customers as possible. There are just certain things we're never going to do. We're as a lender or servicer, you're never going to get a phone call asking for username or credentials. You're not going to get us to call you saying, hey, you need to pay us by wiring money to this bank that has nothing to do with us. It's not going to happen. you know
Yeah.
but they're preying on people at their most desperate times, and it really is despicable when you get right down to it. But you know what, the amount of time we spend trying to work in our industry and make ourselves look good, they spend that same amount of time or more trying to scam people because they can make some big dollar hits. That's why wire fraud is at all-time highs. um, they work hard at it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And
unfortunate.
Scott made a good point in the chat too, that the other vulnerable population that they're hitting are the elderly.
Hmm.
Is that,
Yeah.
people that don't have maybe as strong of a grasp on technology in a lot of instances, and get concerned if somebody calls them and says, they haven't made their payment or whatever it is. Apparently, many of the homeowners are only realizing that it was a scam when their lender starts to foreclose.
Yep, they start the foreclosure process because they thought everything was taken care of and everything was set. They sent their money. But that's the other thing, especially with the changes and ever since COVID and the changes by the FHFA, Fannie and Freddie, with regards to what servicers are supposed to do. It's basically you just stop. Payments just stop, and that's it. There's no money switching hands at that point, except potentially your escrow payment to keep your taxes and insurance going. But the
Right.
actual loan payment stops for up to 12 months at this point.
Yeah.
So at that point, that's all you should be doing. But
Right.
again, we do it every day, so it's commonplace for us.
Yeah.
All we can do is keep trying to educate people. And yeah,
Yeah.
but it's funny. My mom has actually been she's been pretty good with technology. She stayed with it. She has an iPhone. She does FaceTime, all of that stuff. It's great. Um, but I still have to remind her about these things. And now I'm at the point now where she knows whenever she calls me, I'm going to say it's a scam. Just stop. So now in her mind, everything's a scam. I'm like, better that than being
And
trustworthy at
ask
this point.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom is 88.
Okay.
And she texts. She doesn't FaceTime or anything, but she does text and she does email. So for 88, she's actually doing pretty good. But we have talked her into, just in the last couple of years, it's like, don't talk to any of these
Yeah.
people. Tell them that one of us will call them back and your calls will end. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
It's tough. It really is. I feel for people that get taken advantage of, especially now. I mean, you look at the fires that are going on in California, where it wasn't just we lost a couple homes. You lost an entire neighborhood of 9,000 houses. I mean,
yeah,
that is just, I can't even imagine going through that. These people have to be devastated. I mean, and I don't care if you were one of the movie stars or just, every average, Joe, you lost everything,
yeah.
literally everything.
Paul Campbell, who sits on his board, his parents' house was destroyed.
Well,
So we've had people, in our network. Uh, he's had people. We've had people within our network. A couple of my prospects have had homes that have been damaged. And let's talk a little bit about what's going on there. Number one, Representative Maxine Waters is pressing for an investigation um, into kind of like what happened there, what the government's accountability is going to be, the impact of climate change and wildfires, construction materials, fireproofing methods, all of those things that go with those disasters related to that. I just think in this instance, I mean, I think all of those things are good things and good things that we should know about and try to understand in a preventative way. In this instance, I would have to say it makes me really super mad that, people are blaming the firefighters.
oh, oh,
When you look
it's
at staffing levels to manage something like that happened because of 100-mile-an-hour winds, you would have to pay for staff for years. You'd have to be staffed at 10 times plus your normal
well,
staffing for
it's
years to even be able to combat part of that.
yeah, no, for sure. It's amazing to me the amount of misinformation that's going on there, and the finger pointing. There's one, I won't name any particular networks, but there was one that actually took a picture of firefighters that were carrying these canvas bags full of water to put embers out. And they're like, they don't have the equipment to do their job. I'm like, the canvas bag is the equipment. If you knew anything about firefighting, which I have a little bit of insight to, yeah, when they're going around putting embers out, that's the easiest way to get water up a hill to put the embers out, to pump it and do everything else. But they're sitting there saying, oh, they don't have the tools to do their job. They do. But to your point, yeah, when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds going, you're not fighting anything. You can't
Can't take
fly a
the magic.
helicopter. You can't do any of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of their tools are taken away. A lot of their tools are actually taken away when there are
Yep.
winds like that. They can't dump water, those types of things. And then, the statement about understaffing, well, it's kind of like us going through a refi cycle where it's not like in an hour you can completely restaff and have 10 times the amount of people there that you would normally need to support your community in a regular day. So that
Oh,
that apparently is going on. I'm sure they'll investigate it. I hope they do, so they can prevent as many pieces of that as they possibly can.
yeah. I will tell you, whether you like him or hate him, Gavin Newsom, who's the who's the governor of the state of California, he actually has put together, and I don't remember what the website was, but he was putting all this information out there about there was what I'll call misinformation being put out there about what is and isn't happening, and just spelling out, this is what we've done, this is what we have. A lot of people they were putting up a stink about the one. I think there was a water reservoir or something. It had no water and it was a dam. It was shut down for repairs. Yeah, which equated to 2% of the actual water that they would have had available.
Yeah,
2%. So even if it had been running, not much. It wasn't going to make much of a difference.
a little bit of an impact, but
yeah,
not much.
So I'm of the opinion, wait till all the facts come in and let's see what's really going on.
Yeah, it's
quit,
like
quit
don't
with
believe the
thinking.
headlines, right? It's like
Quit
don't
with the
the
clickbait.
headlines might get you to read something. That's what they're meant to do. They're oftentimes
Yeah.
not very truthful.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the other things that happened this past week is Sandra Thompson, head of FHFA, retired right before the inauguration. We were so sad to see her leave. She's been so great for the TMC family and spent a lot of time with us. But in place of that, Bill Pulte, who is head of Pulte Capital Partners, was nominated to lead FHFA. Pulte is someone who recently left our network, had been in our network for a number of years. Obviously, they do, a lot of mortgage business. This is someone who has mortgage background. Thoughts of yours about someone taking on that position that has a good, strong, potentially, I don't know that person personally, but presumably has some sort of knowledge in the mortgage space without having any sort of DC background? How effective do you think that person can be?
So the interesting thing, so Pulte actually has really big ties here to Michigan, actually. Because they started Pulte Homes here, and they're a big builder here. He actually does some philanthropy work here for getting rid of blight in the cities and whatnot. So from that perspective, he's done a really, really impactful job. I am all for having people that know our industry being in those positions. I really am.
Yep.
And there's a right way and wrong way to do things, and I think he'll probably figure it out. And I'm hoping, will it get, Fannie and Freddie out of conservatorship? We'll see, because I know that's one of the goals.
Yep.
And I'd like to see that as well. but yeah, I love anyone that has the industry knowledge, because there are a lot of facets to what we do. And because I know I'm part of the TMC advisory or advocacy group. I've done that. I've done it locally here for the MMLA that I'm part of as well. I go to DC usually twice a year, sometimes 3 times, to do advocacy for our industry. And we're always telling the same stories to our representatives. And you just get this look on their face like, what's a mortgage? Yeah. They really have no idea what goes on in our industry and how intricate it is. It was like the frustrating thing when the CFPB kept spouting off about junk fees. I'm sorry, but title work's a required part of the transaction. Fannie and Freddie tell us that,
Can you get rid of that requirement? It's like,
So anytime we can put someone that has the years of experience that he has into something like position, I'm all, let's see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Same.
prejudge anything because, no one, you're never going to agree with anyone 100% of the time. But his experience alone, I would say, let's give it a shot because I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And
The
hopefully it
one
turns
thing
out to be good.
the one thing that I hope remains with the new administration coming in, we've had some just really great people that we had met and we got to meet with every June. And they were very, very open to hearing, I mean, to listening to us and our group. I mean, TMC is primarily, smaller to mid-size lenders for the most part. That's kind of the core of who is within our network. And I feel like many times you're not heard the same way that a very large lender member is. And I feel like the administration, many of whom are leaving, did a really good job of like trying to understand the differences between mortgage if you're a top 10 player in the industry and everyone else. And I feel like they heard it as well. They not only listened, but heard. So that's the one thing that I hope continues because I think that's a very, very healthy thing to have happen in getting multiple opinions in that that make your jobs different and the impact of fees and everything on a smaller lender is a little bit different when you're a bigger lender, all of those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be nice. I'm hoping that stays the same too, because I mean, at the end of the day, love or hate the government, they're supposed to represent everyone equally.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fair to say I might be a little concerned about that going forward, at least for the next few years. But um,
Same.
it's just one of those things where, yeah, they've always been real good to us. They met with us. We had some really good conversations. Um, and I'm hoping that stays the same because it does make a difference as much as the trigger leads bill that keeps getting put off. We've made some real progress on that, I think. And we finally have to the point where we just need to figure out which bill it's being attached to so we can get it passed
Yeah,
and get that going. But, it's been a couple of years in the making. So, you know
it
what?
has.
It moves slow, but I think that's somewhat deliberate, quite honestly.
Well, and one of the other things you bring up, like one of the topics that was on my list too, that happened within the last week or so, is of course with people potentially shifting out of positions, new people shifting into some of those positions at the agency. The GSEs delayed the buy merge credit report. We knew that was going to be a very, very long term process anyway. But that was delayed, timeline uncertain. Um, you know, um, yeah. So that's kind of been, I mean, it hasn't really been, well, it kind of has been on hold. They've been working through some things, but
Yeah,
do you think that will
yeah,
ever happen? Or is it just,
it'll it'll happen eventually. It will, because the antiquated scoring models we use in the mortgage world, they need to be updated. I mean, well, they're 20 plus years old at this point.
yeah,
We definitely need to do something. But the other problem is you have to have everyone on board, meaning you have to have HUD, you have to have the VA, you have to have USDA, you have to, and as well as Fannie Freddie, all using the same model, if you will. Otherwise, you're increasing costs again that are going to be passed on to the consumer. It's
yeah.
so yeah.
Well, and that's so true because one of the places and one of the level sets that they wanted to make with this credit change is, some of the ways that we gauge credit right now isn't necessarily as inclusive maybe as it needs to be for people that are particularly in underserved
Yep.
communities. So that was one of the goals. And with that being such a large target market for people in mortgage, it might be kind of helpful if some of those things did get addressed and fixed.
Yeah, it's like I said, I think it'll ultimately get done, but it will not be this year, and I don't even think it'll be done next year.
I don't
Um,
either. Was it
but
even supposed to be done this year before
yeah,
when it was like moving full force ahead? It was the end of
yeah,
this year, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be using it by now, so
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of
it's
those
again there were a
things.
lot of unanswered questions that they need to work. They need to work that stuff out, and like I said, I mean, I personally don't see the difficulty when they say you need a tri-merge report, and I think it should be as easy as you update to these scoring models. Here's the minimum FICO score model you can use, or you have I forget the names of them on the credit bureaus, but you see all three names. But it's like just these are the minimum models you use for it. Just move forward. I mean, times change, you got to move with it.
Yeah.
You really do.
It's so hard. It's so hard. A lot of people don't have that same flexibility that some of us have in that decision making.
Yeah.
It would be a hard place for me to reside every day. You probably
Yes.
a little bit frustrating, but yeah,
Yeah.
we
For
are at the
sure.
bottom of the hour today. That went super fast. I appreciate you so much. I hope that I get to see you. I'll see you in March.
Yes, you will.
Hope to get to see you soon. For those of you on here, if you have not registered for our conference, it's March 16th to 18th. Early bird registration does end at the end of the month. So make sure and get that done and take advantage of that. And we will be back here for the last week in mortgage today, next Tuesday at the same time. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye.